Okay, so let's react to this. We got two separate things. I'm going to try to do this in one video because I don't want to do two separate videos because they both talk about the same topic. But everyone knows about the Jaden Ivey situation. The Bulls released him, waived him, cut him, fired him, whatever term you want to use. He got kicked off out the NBA roster for going on an anti-LGBT rant, and that's like the headline of it. Of course, like depending on where you side at, you're not gonna say it's anti-LGBT. You'll probably say he was a guy that was talking about his belief and his faith and all that stuff. He made countless videos about it. There is a backstory now. More details have come out about why it wasn't just like him going on an anti-LGBT rant. It was more so about more stuff going on. Like apparently there's some issues that started in Detroit. Remember, he played for the Pistons. The Pistons got rid of him, and the Bulls took him on knowing that he had these issues, apparently, but they were behind closed doors. Once he started having these issues in the public, that's when it became a problem, and that's pretty much what the highlight of how he got cut. Now, of course, depending on what side you're on, if you're a religious nut-wing fanatic, sorry, I said nut-wing, right-wing fanatic, excuse me. If you're a religious right-wing fanatic, you see this as a guy being fired for having a religious belief, right? That's how you see it. You don't really look at the context. You just say, oh, a guy preaching the word, Christ is king, blah, 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 that stuff. And then if you're on the other side of that, if you're maybe pro-LGBT, or if you're part of that community, you feel like this guy was saying hateful stuff about your community and you are glad he's fired, right? So I guess everyone has their own opinion. But I wanted to go over these two comments because one is a video from Tanya Ray Fox, who addressed this, and she made some good points I wanted to go over. I didn't watch the full clip. I just saw what she wrote in her replies because apparently people were comparing Jaden Ivey to Colin Kaepernick, and she breaks down why that's a false comparison. So let's watch this clip of her, and then we'll react to it on the other end.
A difficult time with the concept of freedom of speech being punished in professional sports. The same people who were incredibly comfortable with Colin Kaepernick being blackballed from the NFL. So here's the thing. There are absolutely hypocrisies from the NBA in terms of what they do care to punish and what they don't. What we also know is that Christianity is alive and thriving in the NBA. In her piece for the Chicago Tribune, Julia Poe wrote about this Jaden Ivey debacle. She wrote that the timeline for Ivey's descent into extreme evangelism is fairly easy to track. The guard was baptized at home in June of 2024, affirming a new commitment to a born-again lifestyle of evangelical Christianity. She wrote that the timeline for Ivey's descent into extreme evangelism is fairly easy to track. The guard was baptized at home in June of 2024, affirming a new commitment to a born-again lifestyle of evangelical Christianity that prioritizes the concept of the Great Commission. Importantly, she notes that religion, and specifically Christianity, is not a taboo topic in an NBA locker room. Teams provide chapel services, players read the Bible before games, and praise Jesus after them. It takes a remarkable amount of extremity for a player's faith to become remotely notable in this type of environment. She goes on to detail how his faith seemed to deepen after his shattered fibula. Since then, he has lost the ability to provide basic answers to the media without redirecting the topic to religion. He pressed staffers and teammates with uncomfortable questions. He was making teammates and staffers uncomfortable in ways that should have already threatened his job to begin with. They had no intention of giving a fuck about Jaden Ivey's Christian extremism and evangelism until it became so public and so extreme that they had to take action. Realistically, a lot of this stuff is not actually being enforced behind the scenes. In fact, the fact that Christianity is so prevalent, even if they are inclusive to other religions, makes it very clear that they are not trying to cut ties with Christianity whatsoever. Jaden Ivey became a liability. Now, the NFL decided that Colin Kaepernick was also a liability to the league. What he was espousing was safety for Black Americans from police brutality, something that is statistically happening. Jaden Ivey was espousing hate. He was using the Bible to espouse hate toward LGBTQ people, toward anybody who was not on his righteous path. Colin Kaepernick was trying to get people to stop hating. He was critiquing this system, the systems of power, white supremacy. LGBTQ people are marginalized people. They are not in power. They are the oppressed. Since the very beginning of the United States, the Bible has been used to justify all kinds of atrocities. That includes a long history of using the Bible to justify slavery, of using the Bible to justify segregation.
All right, so we get the point there. So pretty much she said, look, it's a false comparison. People out there who are making that comparison need to, it doesn't make sense. And I think she had another clip in here too. She shared this clip, a second reply in her comments that went from someone else. I guess it was from Howard Bryant, who's an author. He says, if you stick around to the end of most NFL games, several players from each team hold hands in a circle and pray. Many are part of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. The idea that Christian faith is somehow discouraged in professional sports is a misguided and factually incorrect as reverse discrimination, another propaganda tool for those on top to take more propaganda tools. Oh, okay. That's all he wrote. Right. So that crushes any theory that the right wing or the right wing Christian people are trying to say that Christianity is not welcome in the NBA or in sports when there are literally many Christians in the NBA. Now, whether you believe they're real Christians or not, I don't know who gets to decide that. But guys always talk about their faith, right? I mean, every time after every game, I like to thank Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, blah, blah, blah. Like, you hear that almost every time from an athlete when they have a big game, when they win a big moment. That's the first thing they say when they get drafted a lot of times. So it's not something that is not being, like, no one is against it, right? And as she said in the video, the dude was pretty much forcing people. He was putting his stuff out there overtly to the point where teammates were uncomfortable. And I think that's where he ended up getting put on notice, because if your own teammates around the league are like, hey, we're not trying to deal with that, then that is how, if people don't want to deal with you, you're going to be gone, right? That's just the bottom line. And so that's what happened. And it almost reminds me a little small bit. I know I don't think anyone brought this up, but remember Mark Jackson, former head coach of the Golden State Warriors, who's now on TV. He was a guy that's really big on faith, and they said he was doing. He would do a lot of like preaching and stuff like that in the locker room and in different places, or in team events or team meetings or whatever. And apparently there was talk that players complained about that. And Mark Jackson has not been able to get a head coaching job since, because of how that type of stuff that he does. Not that he's a believer. It's because you're trying to push it on others. And no one wants to think about that. If you work at a job and you're trying to push faith on others, that could be uncomfortable, or overtly spread the word, right? There's a place, there's a time, there's a situation when that is appropriate. And in the workplace and work environments where a bunch of different people are at, that is just not a place to do it. Not at that moment. You got to read the room. And I think that's what they're saying in many cases. Now, so I wanted to watch that part because she did cover the Colin Kaepernick side of it, because I did see people bring up Colin Kaepernick for some reason. And as she pointed out, as Tanya pointed out, that it's a false comparison, because one guy was fighting for hate to end, and the other one was speaking out against a marginalized group as the LGBT people. Whatever you want to believe about that community, the bottom line is, you can't be hateful towards different communities because you don't accept that or you don't like them. It just doesn't work that way. People are not going to be in favor of you for doing that. It's doesn't matter what your Bible says, right? So let's move on to the Jamel Hill. Jamel Hill also had a comment about this, and she also pointed out about the comments that Jaden made. She goes, I don't know how to pause that. This is distracting, but we'll get to it. She says, let me just see if I can blow this up. Let's blow that up. She said, what did she say? I just want to blow this up so it's not in my way. Jamel Hill said, it feels like Jaden Ivey is having a mental health episode. That was what she said. That's what she started out with. Now, I heard some people mention that as well, and there was a lot of pushback against that. But that said, while his comments about the LGBT community were awful, I honestly think what did him in was calling Catholicism a false religion. There are 2.2 million Catholics in Chicago Metro, and the Pope is from there. Other players have unfortunately used homophobic language and been forgiven. But insulting Catholics, nah, buddy. That's a good point there, because I did not think about that angle, because there were rumors that he did insult the Catholic Church or the Catholic people, who called it a false religion. And that is a wild thing to do, considering that the Pope is from Chicago, right? The new Pope is from that area. 2.2 million Catholics in Chicago. I mean, the LGBT angle probably wasn't even what did him in. I didn't even think of that. That's a good point, because I was almost thinking like, damn, the LGBT people got that kind of power, like they would get a guy fired within a day. We've heard guys say some wild stuff, but when I chalked it up as was, okay, well, some of the guys that did say some wild stuff, they were real players in the league. They were like, I forgot what player it was. Someone said something crazy. I don't remember, but like usually, you hear stuff, but from guys who were valuable to the league to some degree. But this is another angle this is probably the more realistic explanation here about what probably got him fired. Because the homophobic stuff probably would have got him suspended, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that would have got him cut. But this would get you cut immediately. Like, this definitely gets you cut, especially considering the Pope, Chicago, Catholics. So Jamel Hill may be on target here. She may have the right explanation here. And she goes on to say, I am not excusing what he said about the queer community, but I've seen teams NBA forgive other players for saying homophobic slurs like Roy Hibbert, Kobe, Kevin Durant, Rondo. And what all those guys got in common, they all were either their best player on their team, or they were, all-star talent or franchise type players. Even Roy Hibbert had a couple good years, but But him calling out Catholics was fair or not going to be viewed differently, especially in that city. So that, yeah. I mean, that I think Jamel Hill might have the best point on this whole thing about what he did wrong, And this actually makes more sense than the LGBT angle of it, which I initially thought that's where I was going with. But because I wasn't aware. I remember seeing people say he did say something about Catholics, but people online were defending him, said no, he didn't say it. But apparently, he probably said enough that got the attention of somebody, and they were like, "This guy got to go." So now the comment, Jamel Hill's getting kind of crushed in the comments here a bit. Someone says, why are you always claiming mental health issues when bigots expose themselves? I don't know. I mean, she's not the only person that mentioned that. Even his teammates have brought it up. So I don't think it's not something that you could dismiss. And just because someone is a bigot or have hateful views, that doesn't mean that they still aren't suffering from mental health, right? We can't, like, mental health is not like something that you just is only allocated to certain people. Anybody can have mental health problems. Even bigots can be mentally ill. So the two are not, you know, they could both be at the same time. You can be both. What did him in was his decision to choose this moment, this platform, these topics to judge and criticize people who had not come for him. He fired shots to start an unnecessary war, but he will call it speaking truth. Now he must live in his truth. Brother has experienced something like this, blah, blah, blah. Okay, here go a video here. I get what you're saying. Honestly, it bothers me, this whole situation being made out of culture wars. He didn't get ousted purely because he condemned gay people. He said a lot of bizarre things. He's been weird and unstable. Yeah, so I guess this is a clip of him from Chicago when he was with Detroit. Yeah, so they just had enough, right? The team's like, look, we traded for this guy, or however he got to Chicago. They were like, holy smokes, like we can't have him here. Now here's this person, and we go back to this again because somehow people still don't understand what the First Amendment is, what freedom of speech is about. So this person goes, freedom of speech is a fundamental right. People have said all sort of horrible things about Christians. Jennifer Welch once called evangelicals cancer, and she was not canceled or called mentally ill. Like, not even close to what's going on here. Like, but this person is so caught up in the freedom of speech, First Amendment, blah blah blah. They the same people who keep bringing this up. This is supposed to be the party of like the Constitution, the rule of law, but they don't even understand their own Constitution. So Jamel Hill replies back and says, freedom of speech protects you from government persecution for criticizing the government. It does not protect you from facing the consequences determined by a team that is privately owned. We get this wrong all the time. And she's right. Everybody gets it wrong, especially the people who use it the most, the people on the right. They get it wrong probably 99.9% of the time. Also, you know, it's just crazy. People are telling her to delete this. When did he say he was scared of homosexuality? I missed that part. Okay, so he's got people coming to his defense. Yeah, so she's taking it a little bit there from her base. But I think she's right, though. I think she's right. I think she's right. Okay, this guy says, gay Catholic here. I think the headline writers are working overtime trying to put him in the homophobic box because it's just too easy. The gays make the headlines standing up for ourselves, so it's an easier sell than he hates the Catholics too. The comments were just randomly weird to make in themselves. Really, perhaps he had some personal notion to exit a situation where he was unhappy on top of what's going through his mind. That's an interesting angle, you know. But obviously, yeah, the homophobic angle does strike harder because, you know, it gets a broader reaction than saying, oh, he doesn't like Catholics. Because his Catholic comment wasn't really as, from what I saw, it wasn't something that was like overtly as strong as his comments about the LGBT people and the NBA, right? So I guess, you know, he kind of makes a point as well, you know. But I think Jamel Hill is still on target, in my opinion, with her position on the Catholic thing. This person said, I think it's one thing to say a homophobic slur in the heat of a competition, like Kobe did, and another to go on IG and say that type of stuff he was saying. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, saying it during the game is probably a little bit different. Okay, here go for another person. Black Christian female minister here. When did Black America and the Black Christian community become pro LGBTQIA? Question mark. Did anyone tell the Church of God in Christ, the Baptists of the United Methodists? Did anyone send a memo to the choir directors and musicians? 50 million Black Americans have not resolved the LGBTQIA issue or even some of the tenets in Catholicism. I don't know why I can't say that word. The NBA is opening up a can of worms that Black America hasn't even resolved. That's interesting. But what is she saying here? Oh, I don't know. Yeah, female. So I don't know. Jemele Hill didn't sound like she was making a defense either way. I think she was pointing out why he got canned. So I guess people are upset with her because they think she's either taking a pro LG. It's weird because in the comments there are people that are upset with Jemele Hill because she seemed to have not defended the queer community enough, and then some people are upset with her because they think she's pushing a pro queer community response. So kind of weird how her comments are drawing two different reactions. But I thought she was mostly talking about the Catholic thing. That was kind of the point of the post. I thought. I mean, maybe I missed it. Okay, so another person went after her. You claim all this black positivity and preach about white privilege, but as soon as someone says LGBT community is unrighteous, you switch it up. Didn't know LGBT people was the line that had to be crossed. Again, I didn't see. Am I reading this wrong? She wasn't making that. She just gave commentary on what she thought happened. She didn't take a. Let me read this again. She says, it feels like Jaden Ivey is having a mental health episode. That said, while his comments about the LGBTQ community were awful, I honestly think what did him in was calling Catholicism a false religion. So, because she said that she thought the comments he made about the LGBT community were awful, that's why they're attacking her. That's why they're thinking that she's somehow like with this pro. You could think something is awful and still don't want to believe. You could like, let's just say, I don't know Jemele Hill personally, but let's just say Jemele Hill behind closed doors or quietly thought that LGBT gay marriage or was like something that wasn't. She probably would think, look, what if she thought that, but then also thought people who openly attack this community is awful to say that, right? You can have both positions. I don't think she was pushing a pro LGBT point or anti. She was just making a comment that, hey, singling out a community and out there like the way he did was awful to do. I think that's where she was going with it. I mean, I don't know. Maybe she is pro LGBT. I don't know. It shouldn't matter because the commentary, what the guy said, regardless of where you stand, it still was not appropriate. It was not appropriate to single out people who were not bothering him, who were like minding their business, just living their lives. I think that's the awful part of it. Like, why do that, especially and then you're doing that while using the platform of being associated with the NBA. So, I don't know. I don't think that she really was. I don't know. And then she was making another point here about that. Then she goes on to say, I'm not excusing what he said about the queer community. She's not excusing it. So she felt that she needed to double down to defend to say that she wasn't making an excuse for that, because that's how I guess she thought people would take it. So there's two different. So people think that she was not taking that position, but she said she was not excusing it. Right? So she's acknowledging, like, look, what he did was wrong. I'm not excusing it. But they're attacking her on both sides. She's getting hit from both angles. I don't get it. The internet's weird.